YouTube Ozic going the Goat House is back. The Senior Bowl starts next week with practices during the week and the game on the weekend. I'm here with my prospects to watch in different categories. Maybe the best prospects are at the Senior Bowl, players that have to have a big week, in my opinion, and then some prospects that I think will really make some noise and help their stock this week. So excited about this. We always have our winners and losers video right after the game, and we'll have an updated mock draft after the Senior Bowl, after players kind of help or hurt their stock. So excited about it. We have draft coverage. We have free agency coverage. We have playoff coverage here at the Goat House. So join us, like, subscribe to notifications on, follow us on Twitter, and check out our sponsors, Liquid IV, GLD Shop, code GOAT. So starting with just 4 players in this category, but guys that I think are round one locks that are at the Senior Bowl. So not all prospects, just the guys that are at the Senior Bowl. Byron Murphy is one of my favorites, top defensive tackle in the class, absolute stud from Texas, can play in different spots. Obviously can play nose, can play over the guard, can play 3 technique. So he'll obviously be at the Senior Bowl, and he's been already kind of getting some buzz this last week, so he's a big name really to keep an eye on, maybe the biggest name to keep an eye on. Probably debatable between him and Latu from UCLA, maybe the best pass rusher in college football this year. Big-time playmaker, not just getting sacks, but getting his hands on the ball as well. So we'll see him there. One-on-one is going to be fun with those guys, especially Latu, because he's got so many different ways of beating his man, beating the tackle, different pass rush moves, using his length, his speed, the bend, the spin. So it's going to be fun to watch that. And Talis Fuaga, who's been getting a lot of buzz lately, was big time for Oregon State. Could be a starting right tackle right away in the NFL. I think he's a lock to go in the first round, like the very latest at the end of the first round, but I would expect much earlier than that. And Kamren Kinchens, which I guess it could be kind of bold to put a safety on the locks list, but he's so talented, a do-it-all free safety, big-time range, big-time playmaker, and he's physical, too. That's why I love. You don't really see that from the playmaking free safeties like him. He'll come up and hit you. So I think easily the best safety in the class. So I think anyone that's looking for a safety and a fun one that can cover, I think he's pretty much a sure thing to go in round one. So these are guys that the best of the best here. And there's other guys that I think will go in round one that we're about to talk about, but these are the main guys to, if you're looking for talent to keep an eye on. I'm always looking forward to other big name plays. We'll talk about them. We're gonna that really need to have a big day. But here are some other guys that maybe some of you out there think some of these guys should be on that previous list that we just talked about. I do think a handful of these guys will go in the first round. But Bo Nix, the Oregon quarterback, who has a shot to go first round because he's experienced. He's a very smart quarterback, a guy that's a little more advanced maybe than some other quarterbacks with his ability to kind of read defenses, pre-snap, and make adjustments at the line. And maybe teams will view him as a safe pick. Maybe he doesn't have like the super flashy potential or play that some of the top quarterbacks have, but realistic shot to go in the first round because he's coachable and he's smart and he's solid. Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback from Toledo, he's been getting some buzz lately. Big-time playmaker, had really good tape is this season at Toledo, but he didn't play the best competition, compared to, some of the other top guys that we talk about, the 2 Bama corners, Nate Wiggins from Clemson as well. But big-time playmaker there in Quinyon Mitchell. Tyler Guyton's another guy who's been getting some buzz recently, Oklahoma tackle, because, he's been very solid, but he's a freak athlete, and teams want to work with those freak athletes at the tackle position. Jordan Morgan's another one. Arizona was solid. It was a very solid team this year, and he was good from the start. Their star tackle there. Troy Fatano, I think this is a big one to watch. The Washington offensive lineman, because he's a tackle that there's a lot of talk about him possibly playing guard. So it's big opportunity here, especially during the week in practice, because I think one of the things we hear about most during Senior Bowl week is the offensive linemen that are playing in this spot, and maybe this spot. Like, Cody Mauch was a big one last year because he played center, guard, and tackle throughout the week, and he looked pretty solid. So it's a big week for him to kind of prove that what he can do, and teams will kind of get a good look at him, like where we want to draft him, where is it worth taking, because he's getting some buzz in the first round. And then Jackson Powers Johnson, who's kind of known as by far the best center in football, in the draft from Oregon. Obviously he'll be there, and maybe they'll get some looks at him, at guard as well. Xavier Leggett, who's a really solid after the catch receiver from South Carolina. And you don't really get to see the after catch ability when they're not full go during the week in practice, but we'll see how he separates. Is he more than just, I believe he is, but is he more than just an after-the-catch guy? And then Tez Walker, who was out in the beginning of the year, but big-time threat at the receiver position, especially speed threat down the field, tracking the ball, so he can showcase his speed, his athleticism at the Senior Bowl, and has a potential to sneak in. Both those receivers, a potential to sneak in the back of the end of the round. Peyton Wilson, linebacker from NC State, was one of the better college football players on the defensive side of the ball this year. Kind of a do-it-all linebacker. I like about him, it's kind of just smooth. The way he moves, the way he covers. That's the best way to explain it with him. And he had a really solid year. And Ennis Rakestraw from Missouri has been getting a lot of buzz. It seems like we almost could put him in the lock category, maybe. We're kind of getting there, but it's tough to do it, especially because he's had recent surgery. He's played with an injury this year, so he will not be participating in the Senior Bowl. So that is very unfortunate. But he's supposed to participate at the Combine, which really isn't that far away. End of February. So, but that's a big name that is on the roster, big time player, physical corner. Played through an injury and looked really good. Missouri had a really good defense this year. A guy that can definitely go in round one, but we will not see him participate, so kind of keep that in mind. So those are the guys that the first two categories are pretty similar. These next two categories we're going to go over are my favorite, like the main part of this video. First, these are big names, like well-known names, and some of these guys maybe you think are going to go first round. I think they absolutely need to have a big week. And we had kind of talked about a couple other guys already that I could put in this list. Other Washington player, Troy Fatanu, we talked about him. I think he has to have a pretty solid week, but he's a guy that, I think is pretty safe as a top 50 pick. But Michael Penix Jr., Washington quarterback, needs to have a big week because this is a guy that he has the arm talent. We saw it all year. There's no debating against that. There's no dispute against that. He has the arm talent. He's a little bit older of a prospect, and he has the past injury concern. And Washington, he had a lot of time he went to his first read, and his first read was open, or he can make a big play. Had a lot of time to throw. We talked about that. So, and then he had a really good season, and the Michigan game didn't really help him. The national championship didn't really help himself because he struggled against better competition, and he was limping around, kind of beat up all game, and that doesn't help his case when it comes to the durability concern. So, he had a great year. Maybe helped the stock compared to where he was before the year, but he ended it. It wasn't that great for him for multiple reasons. So if he comes out here and has a really good week, that's great for him. If he struggles a little bit, that's tough. Like he has no shot of going first round. Then he may not even go in early second if he comes out here and struggles. Because what people are going to remember is what happened recently. Like C.J. Stroud, we remember like that Georgia game. That was something. That doesn't happen by mistake, and that really would helped him, his stock, for other people, for myself. So what we're remembering about Penix is right now is the national championship game. Now it's on the Senior Bowl. Now it's on him right now. Spencer Rattler, which years and years ago we thought could be a future first-round pick because he was playing in Lincoln Riley's system and at Oklahoma, and he has that flashy big playability. Rocket arm, a lot of velocity behind that ball, can throw on the run. That's really his game. Under pressure, he could struggle at times, reading defenses, taking, the open receiver underneath, the accuracy there. That's kind of where he struggled. He ends up moving on from Oklahoma as he struggled and got replaced by Caleb Williams. It is Caleb Williams he got replaced by. And you thought maybe he'd do a little bit more damage at South Carolina, but he's still a solid quarterback. So if he comes out here and then, showcases those skills and, maybe scouts, because there's some scouts and there's some people within front offices in the NFL. They actually will look at what they were like in high school, and then maybe what they can could they bring that out of them more, and maybe they think he got kind of ruined in college. So if he showcases that talent, teams may go, all right, this might be the guy we thought he was supposed to be. We just got to work with him a little bit. Then Johnny Wilson from Florida State, big body receiver. There's some people talking about could he move to tight end because he's big. He's not the speediest guy in the world, but he actually could when we get to the combine. He could, because of the strides that he has, the length. Maybe he runs a better 40 than expected, but He had some big plays, some contested catch plays, but he did have some bad drops whenever there's kind of defensive backs around him ready to hit him. He kind of feels it, drops the ball. So he needs to come out here. In two questions: catch the ball, a little more consistently out there when you're in practice, when you're in one-on-ones, and separate in those one-on-ones. The receivers should be able to separate. I say this every year. Receivers should really win every single rep in one-on-ones. It's such an advantage to the offense, disadvantage to the corner. No offensive line. There's no rest of the defense to worry about. The quarterback knows who he's throwing to. The receiver knows he's getting the ball. It's such a disadvantage for the defense. So we got to see him separate. And then Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son from USC, who was pretty solid this year. He's just not. There's so many good receivers at the top. So many of them. In the first round, you could have a record of receivers going in the first round, and even the guys that don't, early second round, we've kind of talked about some of those guys that could potentially, in the first slide or the second one that could potentially be, those early second round receivers or late first. They're kind of overshadowing, Brandon Rice. He's not being talked about as much as you think he probably should be. So he needs to come out here and have a really solid day to kind of get him in that conversation where some people think he belongs. And then Kingsley Suamataia from BYU, really solid. This is a guy that we probably could put in the same with maybe Penix, Kalen King and Bullard. We probably could put these guys in the potential first round picks range as well. But they need to come out and have a big week. I remember Blake Freeland from BYU last year. He got beat up, and he helped the Colts out this year as a good player. He's a really good player at BYU, the offensive tackle. He got beat up at the Senior Bowl, and that hurt his stock. No matter how he ended up, if he ends up good, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it hurt his stock. So just kind of thinking, a year later, another BYU tackle can be a little bit tougher going against these physical defensive linemen, the pass rushers that they didn't see yet this year. So, there's some talk about him in the first round. For him to have any shot the first round, he needs to come out and have a big week. Kalen King going into the year was like, is this cornerback one? Like, is it for sure a first rounder? Is it corner one? And his stock kind of went down during the year. He played solid, just not as good as expected. He did get beat up by Marvin Harrison Jr., but it is Marvin Harrison Jr. And there's not a whole lot of threats this year for some reason in terms of the passing offenses, the receivers in the Big Ten outside of Ohio State and Michigan. So he thought he'd play a little bit better. So, but I thought he was fantastic last year. You could argue he's better than Joey Porter Jr. So if he comes out and has a good week, teams are going to go, okay, like that talent's there. Let's draft him based on what we just saw at the Senior Bowl and based off 2 years ago because we just saw it again. So it could be the case. Javon Bullard's an interesting one because he's a very talented defensive back that is mainly a slot defender, a nickel defender. He had moments lining up at safety, but he's mainly that guy. So usually you get the Senior Bowl. That's the big thing about the senior. You get to see versatility. You get to see what these guys can and can't do. So, of course, they're not going to, in practice, they're not going to have Bullard just only line up in the slot or slot situations and one-on-ones and practice and scrimmage in the game. They're going to have him do several things. We might even see him we're going to see him cover one-on-one, pressing and one-on-ones probably. So what could he do? Is he, relying on a specific scheme and a specific fit because they're not going to run in the game. They're not in the game, in the practice. They're not going to run exactly what Georgia ran. He's a really good football player, but is he more than like such a specific scheme position fit? And sometimes we see like the slot, the nickel corner guys, even though they're talented, go a little bit later in the draft, it's because teams are like, well, he's such a specific type of player that we can wait and get him. It happened to Brian Branch last year, which I actually disagreed about him being he was mainly a slot defender. I agreed on that, but he could play safety, but he's so good at zone. He's so good at man. So I was surprised he dropped. Bullard is not as good as Branch, but maybe that's this year's Branch possibly. Tyler Davis has been a big name for a long time. It felt like he was at Clemson forever. And is a dominant run stuffer, on the inside of the defensive line. He's dealt with injuries. It's just a big name that he could go out there and showcase what he's capable of. Because there was times where he thought this is a future, not only first round pick, but top 10 pick maybe because he's that good. I don't think we ever thought he was Dexter Lawrence, but maybe another Clemson guy like that, another version of him. perhaps. Tyron Hopper had a really good year for Missouri, one of the top guys on that defense. What I want to see from him is, and this is a guy that linebacker group's kind of wide open. I don't think it's completely out there. I don't expect him to have a shot at linebacker 1, but it's not complete. It's like 0% chance. But he has an opportunity to kind of make himself a second-round pick, third-round pick. Play speed, kind of want to see that. Where's his play speed at? And I think it's really easy to see that in some of these drills they run throughout the week. And another Missouri player, Cody Schrader, who had a monstrous season, was huge for them all year, was huge for them when it mattered most in the Ohio State bowl game, against Ohio State. He's being doubted a little bit. As good as he was this year, like he's another version of Blake Corum. I think there's more to Blake Corum's game, but how dominant he was this year, I should say. He's just not being talked about. He's just one of those guys that continues to be doubted because he doesn't, does he fully look the part? Does he have the long speed? He's on the shorter side. He wasn't supposed to be anything. Mizzou game was shot. He ended up working out. He wasn't a big name ever. So those types of guys just continue to be doubted, and he'll continue to be like that. Somebody will draft him. He'll be solid running back 2 maybe next year, but he's going to have a big game or a big week because running backs typically don't struggle too much during the week though. But that's a guy that just because it almost feels like people want to doubt him a little bit. He's going to have to go out there. Same with Michael Penix. Like, it's another example. Like, you have to go out there and show what you got and be consistent. And then one more group of guys here, probably my favorite part of this. I'm kind of every Senior Bowl during the week, mainly during the week of practice, but the game helps as well. The practice is more important, but there's always those guys like these guys are really helping their stock. Like maybe they were somewhat of big names, kind of got somewhat of big names here, or maybe they were just sleepers, not that big of names. Watch out for these guys. These guys are soaring. So I'm kind of predicting who's going to make that noise. We're going to start with Lad McConkey, who's actually kind of a bigger name on here. Just so consistent and so good at Georgia. Gets separation. He's really smart after the catch, like really strong after the catch. Probably underrated in that category. People talk about him on day 2, like third round, maybe second round. I think he can showcase quite a bit to maybe we go, could someone take him late first round? So that's a guy to really watch that could really help us out. Stock. Austin Booker. No one talking about Austin Booker, the Kansas pass rusher. He is solid. He had a really good year. Athletic pass rusher. I thought he played pretty well against good competition this year as well. So that's big. No one talking about him. Can't wait to see him in one-on-ones and see him kind of in the scrimmages, see him in the game, see if he can get some pressure and get some sacks. That's a guy that's going to make some noise. Quite a few corners here. Kalen Carson from Wake Forest, really solid too. I mean, any team that played Wake Forest, teams were scoring on Wake Forest, but obviously you're not throwing his direction, throughout his career there because he was by far the best player on that defense. So really good player that we can start talking about. The corner class is really good because there's like the guys we talk about in the first round. There's some guys that are making some more, I guess their stock's going up, making some more noise already. Quinion Mitchell, Rakestraw from Missouri, those guys. But watch out for these guys. Josh Newton's very solid. He was kind of a bigger name going into the year, and it kind of got quiet. I think he could have a good weekend. And Cam Hart from Notre Dame. Notre Dame's got a future first round pick. That's the kind of the talk Notre Dame with Benjamin Morrison, the other corner. So I think he kind of gets forgot about because of that, how good Morrison is. And he's, as a true freshman, people were talking about him as that, for next year's draft. And he had a really good year. He locked up Marvin Harrison Jr. But teams still went out there and they threw at Benjamin Morrison more than Cam Hart. They were not throwing Cam Hart's way. He was he was a tight in coverage. I think there's a reason for all that. So I think that's kind of why he gets forgotten about a little bit. A lockdown type corner that's got pretty solid length. Watch out for him. Some of these corners making some noise. Then Braden Fisk, who was a transfer from Western Michigan that Florida State got this year. He's a monster. I'm surprised he's not being talked about more. This is a guy that after the Senior Bowl, after we see him, I think he's going to dominate one-on-ones. I really think because he can win with strength, but he's got a nice, swim move as well. Strong, strong arms, strong hands. I think this is a guy we're going to see in one-on-ones all week, and people might be going like, people know his name, obviously, but I think people might be going like, this is like easily a top 50 pick. This might be a late first round guy. So big guy to watch for there. Graham Barton, a guy that also you can kind of put in the category as maybe potential first round pick, and in the category he probably needs to have a big week because it's a guy that's played tackle throughout his career, but you feel like this guy could be a big-time guard at the next level. So we're going to see him play multiple positions. Has to do well there to kind of showcase what he can be for an NFL team. A reason for them to draft him. Michael Pratt, Tulane quarterback, who had a really good career, like really solid. He was actually gonna, be a grad transfer, like go transfer somewhere bigger. There was some just little rumors like Oregon, because he's that good, he's that talented. But he's like, I'm gonna go to the draft, and I think this is kind of like a safer pick. In the mid rounds, it could be like this year's Aiden O'Connell, but better. Really, I think he's got more arm talent, believe it or not. I think he'll show that. I think he'll show that out there throwing the ball during the week. And there's probably some bigger names, honestly. Like Sam Hartman might be a bigger name. Joe Milton's definitely a bigger name, and he might show his rocket arm, but is he accurate enough? Pratt's better than both those guys, but he's probably better than Rattler. Rattler is up in the air because he's kind of like a boomer bust guy. So Pratt's a guy that I think he'll go out there and he'll have a good, efficient, consistent week. The two running backs that I really like, Marshawn Lloyd and Jalen Wright. Lloyd from USC, Jalen Wright from Tennessee. Watch out for these guys. And it's hard to have major takeaways from running backs, except Tyjae Spears last year. I thought was a big takeaway. That was a big name throughout the Senior Bowl week. But Lloyd is an elusive runner. Very, I think a good mixture of physical and elusive, making people miss. I wish USC threw him the ball more because he looked really good in that category, like a home run hitting guy. And Jalen Wright, you think Tennessee, Milton's going to air it deep nonstop. It's kind of like, the last couple of years, Tennessee's just been airing it out, but Wright was really good. He can actually pass protect too, believe it or not. I think he's a little more physical than people give him credit for. He's good. There's some sneaky running backs in this class. Trey Benson's talked about a lot. Not a sneaky one. He's up one towards the top, Blake Corum. There's more than that, but these are two guys that do not rule them out for RB1. Like, will they be the first running back taken? I'm not necessarily saying that. I can't say 0% chance, but these guys could, at the end of, because all these running backs are so close. Like at the end of the NFL season next year, we could be going one of these running backs as the best rookie running back. I was pretty high on Lloyd right away, but now I'm starting to get into Jalen Wright a little bit. So these are guys, and of course this list isn't going to be 100% accurate. It's kind of tough to predict who will help their stock during practice the Senior Bowl. But these are some good guys to watch. Some good guys to watch. I really think are going to boost their stock. A lot of corners here. Chances are all of them won't really boost their stock. I'm disappointed that Rakestraw isn't participating, but that's a really good player that doesn't really need to help stock that much. But I'm excited about it. Because it's always a fun time of the year for the draft process. Like who's going to help themselves, how much they're going to help themselves, and you kind of get some intel throughout the week from coaches, what they're saying and who they're meeting with, things like that. And the game kind of tops it off. Practice is always more important in the game though, because you see a lot more of the game. Everyone's got to play, and there's only 4 quarters, and it's a fast game, so it helps. Because you want to see, practice is more important, but you want to see who's game ready, who shows up in the big moments for the game. So it's kind of rare that someone completely stands out. That's the thing about the game. That's where it is kind of important, because it is rare that someone completely dominates and stands out. There's always good players, but if somebody does do that in a short amount of time, that's big. That's big. So excited about it, and we'll have again the game happens, and then immediately when the game ends, I start working on the winners and losers video, mainly focus on the winners, stock up. Sometimes I talk about NFL fits for those players after we got to see them during this process, and then usually the next day or two I have an updated NFL mock draft. We'll do that after the Senior Bowl. So we're kind of known for those things. We always do them every year. So really excited about this time of the year because there's so much going on. Like the draft process is starting up. Free agency, trades, that talk starting up, and then we have the playoffs going on still at the same time. So a lot of fun. We have you covered nonstop on our Twitter as well, so it's a must follow. Links pinned in the comments for anything you're looking for. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. It's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.